Hey friends, as we close out this first season of the podcast, I am sharing recordings from some of my favorite talks and sermons over the past year. This one comes from a sermon I gave at my church, Providencia, here in West Palm Beach, Florida, back in March. We were going through the books of Ezra and Nehemiah, and I got the chance to incorporate some musical theater into the sermon. So there's going to be some songs on here. I hope that's going to go through in YouTube. So if you don't hear them, then I explain which songs they are and you can pause and go on. But there shouldn't be any problem on Spotify or any of the other platforms, but I'm not sure about YouTube. You can support the work of this podcast and get more content by going to patreon.com/holy ourselves. And now on to the main episode. Thank you, Micah, everyone, Sarah, Claire, Aaron. Hello, family. If I haven't had the chance to meet you, my name is Josh Proctor. If it's your first time, welcome. And we're really glad to have you. I am actually, normally you would think I'm doing confession. I'm not. I'm preaching right now. We're switching up the schedule, switching up the format today. And we're still in our series of Arise and Rebuild, going through the books of Ezra and Nehemiah. And as we explore these books, we're touching on three themes: renewing our city, rebuilding our church, and restoring our lives. And then especially during the season of Lent that we are in, leading up to Easter, we're doing a comparison of the lives of Nehemiah and the lives of Jesus, and especially Jesus's journey to the cross. The first week of Lent, Keith dove into the theme of humility within the story of Nehemiah and the story of Jesus. And then Ashley preached last week on finding our calling and how that calling must be grounded in God's love for us. That is where the root and the foundation of our calling comes from. And this week, I am going to pose a question that will drive us through this time together. What is the difference between a man and a monster? I know that feels like way out of left field, so bear with me. So you're probably like, where did that come from? Keith's talking about humility, Ashley's talking about God's love, and Josh is up here talking about monsters. There's a reason. We got it. And that is correct. And we're going to do it with the help of musical theater. I know, we have musical theater nerds in here. I mean, we're literally going to Les Mis together. We have musical theater nerds in here. We're going to actually listen to some musical theater a little bit. Yes. I know our church has like a musical theater vein in it, and that's going to come out today. I wish we could just sit here and like watch musical theater, just like song after song, but we don't have time. We'll be here all day. So we're going to like talk about some, and we're going to show two of them at least. So growing up, for me, my favorite movie of all time was Beauty and the Beast. I will argue with anyone here, it is one of the best movies ever made. 100% hands down. Fun fact, actually, Beauty and the Beast, first animated film ever to be nominated for Best Picture at the Academy Awards. That is how great it is. Sadly, it did not win, but still got nominated. And I'm gonna let you into a unique aspect of me. Can anyone guess the song of Beauty and the Beast that will make me cry every single time? No, it is not. It does not involve Celine Dion. It's actually the Mob song. I know. Yes. Bear with me. There's a whole thing about it. It brings me to tears every single time. And the Mob song, if you're not familiar with Beauty and the Beast, which you really should go home and watch it. The villagers realize the beast is real. They've realized, oh, this is not just like a myth. This thing exists. And they lock Belle up and they go to kill the beast. And there's a moment in it when I just feel so much for Belle and her father, I think, in that moment. Like your entire community has betrayed you and now you're locked up and all this stuff. But in this sequence, Belle, they're about to lock her father into an insane asylum, and Belle asks the magic mirror to show the beast. And as the villagers respond in horror, she defends the beast, explaining that he seems frightening, but he's actually kind and gentle. And then Gaston responds going, if I didn't know any better, I think you have feelings for this monster. And Belle responds, he's not the monster, Gaston. You are. It gets me every time. I don't know why. And I think it's this reality that Beauty and the Beast is one of these movies, these musicals that ask this question, who is the monster? Like, sure, the beast is a monster. He has very monster characteristics, but he begins to transform. He begins to change. And it's this moment in the movie you realize he wasn't the monster. It's been Gaston. The entire time it was Gaston. And it makes us think about our understanding of the true monsters. And this theme of monsters runs throughout so much of musical theater. Like, if you do not notice it, you will notice it after this, watching musical theater, how often this comes up. Recently, Christian and I realized that Rachel hadn't seen Hunchback of Notre Dame. And we were like, this needed to be remedied, like right now. So we had a movie night and we watched it together. And I was sitting in it thinking about how the opening number of Hunchback begins with a narration of the puppeteer who says, I'm going to tell you the story of a man and a monster. And after he explains the origin story of Quasimodo, the Hunchback bell ringer, who you assume is the monster, the number ends with him singing, here is the riddle. Who is the man and who is the monster? In the film, the hope is that you realize that it's actually Frollo, the judge, who is the monster, who locked up Quasimodo in the bell tower. Each of these musicals asks the question, what is the difference between a man and a monster? Is it appearance? Is it lack of self-control? Is it manipulation? What categorizes someone as a monster? And again, I could sit here giving example after example. I had so many I wanted to fit in here, but we're keeping them minimal. If you, like I said, if you haven't noticed it, you will. And sadly, that's not going to happen. You're going to have to do that at home. But how many of you have ever heard of Epic, the musical? Okay. We have a few. Yes. So if you don't know of Epic the musical, Christian introduced it to me. And it's not a musical. It's never been stage produced. It's not a movie. It is a concept album, which is written in the format of a musical. And it's based on the Odyssey. So the writer formats the journey of Odysseus around the question of men and monsters. If you didn't read the Odyssey in high school, or if you've forgotten, I'm going to give you a Cliff Notes version. So Greek myth, it follows the story of Odysseus, who is headed home after 10 years of war at Troy. And Odysseus is known for being clever. He's known for being merciful. But on his journey, with his soldiers, he is constantly challenged by monsters and gods who are just constantly standing in his way. And the Greek gods in Greek mythology do not take well to mercy. It's not their most beloved trait. And they push Odysseus to impossible decisions, even involving killing an infant, which I'm giving, that's going to come up in the song we're going to listen to. And it makes Odysseus ask the question, is mercy too costly? Is the only way home going to be becoming a monster himself? So we're going to listen to a song from this, where this is Odysseus actually processing this question of what does it mean to be a monster and what is worth the cost of going home. So we're going to watch this right now.
How has everything been turned against us? How did suffering become so endless? How am I to reunite with my estranged? Do I need to change? I'm surrounded by the souls of those I've lost. I'm the only one whose line I haven't crossed. What if the greatest threat we'll find across the sea is me? What if I'm the monster? What if I'm in the wrong? What if I'm the problem that's been hiding all along? What if I'm the one who killed you every time I cave to guilt? What if I've been far too kind to foes, but a monster to ourselves? What if I'm the monster? Is the Cyclops struck with guilt when he kills? Is he up in the middle of the night? Or does he end my men to avenge his friend and then sleep knowing he has done him right? When the witch turns men to pigs to protect her nymphs, is she going insane? Or did she learn to be colder when she got older and now she saves them the pain? When a god comes down and makes a fleet drown, is he scared that he's doing something wrong? Or does he keep us in check so we must respect him and now no one dares to piss him off? Does a soldier use a wooden horse to kill sleeping Trojans cause he is vile? Or does he throw away his remorse and save more lives with guile? If I became the monster, threw that guilt away, would that make us stronger? Would it keep our foes at bay? If I became the monster to everyone but us, and made sure we got home again, who would care if we're unjust? If I became the... Oh, ruthlessness is mercy upon ourselves. And deep down I know this well. I lost my best friend, I lost my mentor, my mom, 500 men gone. This can't go on, I must get to see Penelope and Telemachus. So if we must sail through dangerous oceans and beaches, I'll go where Poseidon won't reach us. And if I gotta drop another infant from a wall in an instant so we all don't die, then I'll become the monster. I will deal the blow, and I'll become the monster like none they've ever known. So what if I'm the monster lurking deep below? I must become the monster, and then we'll make it home. Penelope, Telemachus. Hopelessness is mercy upon ourselves. I'll become the monster.
In this song, we hear Odysseus processing the frustration and guilt he is experiencing. He fears that he's not seeing himself correctly. What if he's the monster? I've definitely been there. I can relate. I bet many of you can relate. There's this moment where your own shame and your own fear and your pain make you question everything. What if I'm not seeing this correctly? What if I am the bad guy? From this point in the musical, we see Odysseus making difficult and challenging decisions to get home. And when we get to the end, it begs the question whether the journey made him into a monster. And that is the question you're begged to ask as the audience. One line in the song and throughout the musical stuck with me, and I've been sitting with it. Ruthlessness is mercy upon ourselves. Sit with that for a second. Ruthlessness is mercy upon ourselves. When we think of the concept of monsters, we think about beings who hurt others simply for the purpose of evil, the purpose of harm. Their goal is destruction of all things. But that's not so true, is it? In media, we've found this fascination with villains and monsters to understand what drives them. This has been like a thing that's been going on for a while. We understand that even monsters have motives. They act out of fear, they act out of pain, they act out of anger. This isn't just in musical theater, though. This very question, distinguishing humanity from monstrosity, plays into the entire story of the Bible. And we're going to go through this. In the garden, as the first humans walk with God, they are approached by a serpent, a mysterious figure. This creature, this monster, does not attack them, he entices them with suspicion. Did God really say? Are you so sure that you're being told the whole truth? The story begins with skepticism, even hesitation, that God is holding back on them. And it propels them to take a step towards self-preservation. I don't know if I know everything, so I have to take care of myself in this moment. Then, in the story of Cain and Abel, this monstrous suspicion continues. Cain wonders, is God showing favor to Abel? Does he like Abel better than Cain? And God approaches Cain and says, sin is crouching at your door, seeking to devour you. Sin is depicted like an animal, ravenous with monstrous desires. As the story of Scripture continues, we see people, especially people in power, depicted with monstrous details. There becomes a correlation between sin, darkness, and monstrous qualities. The Pharaoh of Egypt fears that the Israelites will overtake him, overtake his kingdom. His fear leads him to become a monster, killing children to keep him and his empire safe. He doesn't do it for the sake of violence. He doesn't do it out of necessarily wanting to see them suffer. He does it to keep his own people, his position, and his power safe. This is natural of empires, even in our own time. We must put ourselves first, which means ruthlessness on the rest of the world. Every empire since the dawn of time has lived by this philosophy. To thrive, we must oppress. We saw it in the ancient times. We see it today. Again, as the song said before, ruthlessness is mercy upon ourselves. Israel gets freed from slavery in Egypt and creates their own kingdom in Canaan. And Saul becomes the first king. If you know Saul's story, he starts from a place of humility. He actually starts from this really good intention, but soon fear and mistrust creeps in. Fear of abandonment. Is God going to abandon him? Is the prophet Samuel going to abandon him? Then his fear moves to suspicion, just like Pharaoh. David enters the picture and Saul fears being replaced. Suspicion and fear drive him to attempt to murder David and reject his own son. Saul kills himself, and then David becomes king, and through apathy, he becomes a broken monster himself as his home falls apart. And then after David, his son Solomon becomes king. We often think of Solomon as this like wise, really godly king, beloved by God, but the image in Scripture is not so clear. He builds Israel as an empire, almost like Egypt. In order to build the temple of God, he enslaves his own people. He accumulates wealth. He brings in gods along with their values and corruption. And it asks the question, has Israel become Egypt? Has Israel become a monster out of its own pain of what they have gone through? And through that is God's own temple being built by a monster. Israel stood against the values of Egypt and its endeavors, but then through that, it becomes the empire and the monster itself. The oppressed becomes the oppressor. So often we become what we fight against. So often. Chuck DeGroat, a professor of Christian spirituality who has led retreats with us before, he wrote this on social media before, and it stuck with me. The work of justice is incomplete without the work of healing. Dismantling systems is necessary, but if we don't also dismantle the fear and resentment within ourselves, we just recreate the same patterns with new names. Monsters don't spawn out of thin air. They are created. They are formed through pain, fear, and suspicion. One difference between a man and a monster that I see is how they handle pain. Turning to the story of Nehemiah, he comes back to Jerusalem to rebuild the walls, but more than rebuild the walls, he has a vision for the kingdom. He wants to see Israel live out the values of God's kingdom, but he runs up against a problem. We're going to read part of chapter 5 on the screen. First, we're going to read the first 5 verses. So it says, "Now the men and their wives raised a great outcry against their fellow Jews. Some were saying, 'We and our sons and daughters are numerous. In order for us to eat and stay alive, we must get grain.' Others were saying, 'We are mortgaging our fields and our vineyards and our homes to get grain during the famine.' Still others were saying, 'We have had to borrow money to pay the king's taxes on our fields and vineyards. Although we are of the same flesh and blood as our fellow Jews, and though our children are as good as theirs, yet we have to subject our sons and daughters to slavery. Some of our daughters have already been enslaved, but we are powerless because our fields and our vineyards belong to others." We're going to stop there for a second. Nehemiah is confronted with the fact that the Jews have become a monster to their own people. The pain of oppression by the empire has led Jews to oppress their own people in order for their own self-preservation. And Nehemiah feels compelled to call it out. We're going to go to verse 6, the next part. When I heard their outcry and these charges, I was very angry. I pondered them in my mind and then accused the nobles and the officials. I told them, you are charging your own people interest. So I called together a large meeting to deal with them and said, as far as possible, we have bought back our fellow Jews who were sold to the Gentiles. Now you are selling your own people only for them to be sold back to us. They kept quiet because they had nothing to say. Nehemiah was running the risk of losing the support of the wealthy and the powerful among the Jews. If they had turned against him, when he pushed this, if they had turned against him, everything he had planned would have fallen apart. Yet, to allow for this kind of corruption and oppression went against everything he was envisioning. But still, he could have chosen apathy. He could have chosen to say, listen, this is not the moment. This is not the time. We still need to get this wall built. We still need to get these things done. I can't risk rocking the boat. But he also knew that this needed to be something to be addressed. Apathy, I want to sit in this thing. That he could have chosen apathy. Apathy is a strong temptation in the face of monsters when it doesn't affect us as individuals. Nehemiah did not have a mortgage. He didn't have to mortgage his property. He didn't have to sell his children into slavery. None of this actually affected him. He could have stayed quiet. Silence is one of the most dangerous makers of monsters. We see this through the history of the American church. In the 1800s, many white churches actually didn't approve of slavery, but they also didn't see it as worth it for them to do something about it. Then in the civil rights movement, many white churches were for equal rights, but kept telling Black Americans that they shouldn't protest. They just need to be patient. Rights will come. Martin Luther King is quoted as saying this in one of his interviews. He said, I have almost reached the regrettable conclusion that the Negro's great stumbling block is in the stride towards freedom is not the white citizen's counselor or the Ku Klux Klanner, but the white moderate who is more devoted to order than to justice, who prefers a negative peace, which is the absence of tension, to a positive peace, which is the presence of justice. If ruthlessness is mercy upon ourselves, I had to sit with this for a moment. If ruthlessness is mercy upon ourselves, I truly believe that apathy can be cruelty in disguise. Apathy is mercy upon ourselves because the ruthlessness is not targeted at me. I can step out of the way and wait for ruthlessness to hopefully subside. But the reality is that by standing out of the way, I join in the ruthlessness myself. By standing out of the way, I say this ruthlessness is worth just allowing to keep going for this moment. This is where we arrive at the story of Jesus. God dwells outside of the realm of monsters. None of it affects him, far from their reach, but chose to live among us, not simply as humans, but as one of the lowest among us. Philippians 2, verses 5 through 8, it's going to be on the screen, says, Christ Jesus, who being in very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness and being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross. So Jesus refused to play the political game. He didn't just make space for those who the system weighed down upon. He preferred them. He identified with them. He suffered with them. I think we sometimes allow ourselves to believe that Jesus was killed because he said for people to love each other, but that's completely inaccurate. That is not, if he just went around saying love each other, people would be like, great, love it. We love these things. The religious leaders would have agreed. Jesus was killed because his kingdom threatened the system. It threatened the religious leaders and their place in the system. If Jesus was allowed to continue, Rome would invade. They would all die. It was not worth it. The monsters of this world operate by the belief that if you prioritize yourself first, then your family, and then your community, followed by country or world, then that's how we're meant to operate. But the kingdom of Jesus turns the system upside down. It turns it upside down to say the last are first, the lowest are highest. That those who come to pay, those who come to work at the last hour, they will be paid equally, even though they did not work the same amount. Everything gets turned upside down, and the monsters can't have it. The woman gives her last coin in generosity. The boy gives 5 loaves and 2 fish. We give not out of our abundance, but out of what little we have, and God says, I will make it sufficient. Give us our daily bread. So now we're going to listen to another song. We're going to listen to a song from The Hunchback of Notre Dame. As I said before, it sits in this question of men and monsters. What is the difference? I'm going to give a little synopsis just in case anyone hasn't seen this before. You have Quasimodo, the church bell ringer, and Frollo, the judge, who has locked him into the bell ringer. And the question is, which of them is the man and which of them is the monster? And between these two characters, you have Esmeralda, who is this, I'm going to use a gypsy or Roma woman. Both Frollo and Quasimodo are obsessed with her in very different ways, but they are both obsessed with her. Frollo seeks to arrest her, destroy her, maybe own her, and also for the destruction of her people. And through all of this, in pursuit of safety, she finds herself seeking sanctuary in the Church of Notre Dame, where then she sings this song as a prayer we're going to listen to.
I don't know if you can hear me, or if you're even there. I don't know if you would listen to a gypsy's prayer. Yes, I know I'm just an outcast. I shouldn't speak to you. Still, I see your face and wonder, were you once an outcast too? God help the outcasts, hungry from birth. Show them the mercy they don't find on earth. God help my people, they look to you still. God help the outcasts, or nobody will.
I ask for wealth.
I ask for fame.
I ask for glory to shine on my name.
I ask for love I can possess.
I ask for God and His angels.
I ask for nothing. I can get by, but I know so many less lucky than I. Please help my people, the poor and downtrodden. I thought we all were the children of God. God help the outcasts, children of God. children of God.
So here you have Esmeralda, a woman who is literally running and seeking refuge for her own life in a church. She has every right to pray for herself in this moment, to pray for her safety, to pray for her provision. And yet there's a juxtaposition in the prayer of those around who are praying for wealth and glory and love. And not that that's necessarily bad, but then you have her step in, and that's the part where I always cry, where she's like, I ask for nothing. I can get by, but I know so many less lucky than I. She understands that there is the call of those less fortunate than her, even in the midst of the reality that she has every reason to focus self-worth. And that, again, I want to say, not that that's bad. We need to pray for those things in our own life. But God, help the outcast, or nobody will. We all have privilege, marginalization. We all have areas where we are vulnerable, where we are safe. We all have the potential to become monsters. Every single person. All of us. The gospel says that being human, image of God reflecting human, entails a willingness to suffer with those less fortunate than yourself. It calls us to mercy towards those that we don't understand. And ultimately, it invites us to a confident trust that God will win. I've been sitting in Revelation this year, which is really random, but I think the big thing that I've been taking away from it is it's this confident trust in the midst of so much uncertainty that God will win. Like, we see Jesus refuse apathy, refuse ruthlessness, but he did so because of this confident trust in God. Real trust in God does not lead us to apathy, but to action. It does not lead us to ruthlessness, but empathy. Jesus emphasized a faith built on empathetic action. Leaning back into Ashley's sermon last week, when we trust that we are loved by God, that God will win, we are compelled to act, but not from anxiety, fearing what is going to come. We act from confidence. Ultimately, if we aren't willing to suffer for those who are disadvantaged, then we haven't understood the values of the kingdom. Growing up, I loved the book, The Hiding Place. I don't know if any of you have read it. Yes? Okay. My cousin's daughter was just named after Corrie ten Boom, who wrote it, because she's amazing. It chronicles Corrie ten Boom's experience through World War II. Her and her family were Dutch watchmakers in the Netherlands when the Nazi occupation began. They had every reason to say the plight of the Jews was not their problem, not their concern. Their home was not necessarily the safest place to hide Jews, because they were literally half a block away from the police headquarters. Not the greatest place to hide Jews when you're trying to help in this. Still, they built a hiding place, hence the name, and joined the Dutch resistance. Yet, after a while, their operation was found and she was sent to a concentration camp. And she chronicles her experience in the concentration camp, along with her sister who ends up dying. Corrie ended up surviving the war and went on to speak across Europe and North America about how her faith sustained her in the camps. After one of the events, she was approached by a former Nazi soldier who worked at the camp where she was kept and who was actually intentionally horrible to her daughter, to her sister who had died. He had found a transformation of heart and had come to her asking for forgiveness. And in her pursuit of justice, in her stance against the Nazi regime, she was still able to distinguish, just as men can become monsters so easily, the gospel makes a way for monsters to become men again. And she forgave him. She wrote a lot about forgiveness. I was trying to find quotes. I could not find it. It was just, there's too much. You need to go look at it. There's a ton of stuff there. But what I love is that none of it was to equate that this is, that it was fine what had happened. She stood against the Nazi regime and that she was able to pursue this. It does not make excuses for monsters, but it always welcomes mercy. Corey refused the temptation to become a monster herself, and she chose to remain human. This is the hardest route of suffering above all else, to stand against evil while not villainizing people beyond the hope of redemption. Lent begins with Ash Wednesday, where we reflect on limitations, the dust nature of humanity, and we reflect on the capacity we have to be monsters. But we look to Easter holding the promise of redemption, the promise of resurrection, that no one is too far gone. No monster is beyond becoming human again. Maybe you have been leaning into survival. Maybe you have been leaning into self-preservations in ways that have damaged other people's lives. Maybe you have had monstrous actions. There are routes to redemption. There are routes to restoration and healing. Maybe you have been hurt by monstrous actions and don't see hope for the lives of those who hurt you or those who have decided to associate with the monsters. But there are ways to stand against monstrosity while hoping for changed hearts. We're going to sing another song, and then we're actually going to go do confession after that as we reflect on these. But I want you to sit in that question of where is your heart in this tension? And we're going to reflect more on that as we go forward. Well, thank you everyone for listening. There's some ways that I can't believe that sermon happened this year. It feels like more than a year ago, but time flies when you're having fun. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got something out of it. Thank you again so much for listening. There will be some more sermons coming up and talks and things as we close out the year and we go through December and move into January. And I'm really looking forward to sharing with you about season 2. As I said at the beginning, you can go to patreon.com/holyourselves to get more content and support the podcast. You can also go to my Substack and subscribe there for monthly newsletters. Plus, also just go to holyourselves.org if you're interested in spiritual direction, cohorts, and more. I will talk to you all in 2 weeks. Bye, everyone.